Okay, now that we have got our implementation plan in place for Part 9, let us go ahead and jump over here to Visual Studio Express and begin the coding process for it. Starting out with fields in our game class.
All right, let me switch over to the game class and move back up to the beginning, or near the beginning.
Near the beginning. So let's go ahead and start out with, I don't know, a screens commented section.
Sure, that sounds good. Let me jump maybe even right before textures.
Okay.
Put in a section that we'll call screens.
So we can put that color in there, and we can put the sprite font in here.
Right.
So I'll start out with sprite font.
All right, let's drop down a sprite font field, and we'll call this main font.
Moint font.
And let me catch the capitalization on the F.
Okay.
All right, next.
Might as well go ahead, while we're right here, let's put that color in that we talked about, the overlay color.
Right, get that out of the way and defined as well.
Sure.
So what we're going to do is put in a color field, which I'm going to call overlay color. And we'll go ahead and initialize that as well. So we'll set that to a new color of 200 in red, 0 in green, 0 in blue, and 128 in alpha. So we have a semi-transparent color.
Excellent. All right, now we have a few textures to add in, some texture fields.
All right.
So let's go ahead and add in our overlay texture first.
All right, texture 2D, we'll set this to overlay texture.
Oh, got a U in there. There we go.
All right.
Okay, let's go ahead and create the title texture.
And I'm going to get a little bit lazy and copy this so I don't have to keep
That's not
typing
lazy,
in
that's
texture
smart.
All right, but that was title texture.
And let's go ahead and create the level change texture.
All right, so finally, level change texture.
Excellent. Now let's go ahead and get these things loaded, such as the sprite font, these textures, etc.
All right, let's jump down to load graphics content, and let's take a look at some of these. I'm going to duplicate this cell texture line, and we'll use it to load in things like the title texture, the overlay texture, and things like that.
Okay.
Let's actually look at title texture first. Title texture is going to be set to which asset? That would be the title screen asset. So title texture set to title screen.
Okay.
See, next we have
level change texture.
Level change texture, and here we have the level change screen asset. So level change screen.
All right, and yeah, right up underneath the bar texture, let's go ahead and do the overlay texture.
All right, let's put in overlay. Nope, not color. Overlay texture. The overlay texture, I'm going to set to the fill 22.
You got it.
That is a nice plain white texture, and that'll work very nicely for setting up a modulated color.
All right, let's go ahead and get the sprite font loaded in.
And yeah, before I forget, I'll copy one of these lines since the line is going to be very similar. But of course, changes will be the name is going to be main font, and we need to remember to change the type over to a sprite font. Now the asset is of course the Xyrod sprite font, so we'll change the asset name to Xyrod.
Okay.
And I believe that's it.
All right, so now we can go ahead and turn our attention to the screen methods down at the bottom, so we can go ahead and create a region for screens and all that good stuff.
All right, let's jump to the very bottom of the game class now. Here we have regions for things like utility methods and the enemy helper method. I'll jump below each of those, and we'll define a new region. I'll call this region screens. And then end the region off. All right, first screen to address. We're going to take a look at the draw title screen method. This is going to be a private method. It won't return anything, and it's something called draw title screen. And takes in no parameters. All right, what does title screen or draw title screen need to do? It needs to draw the title screen graphic in a way that fills the screen. We've actually seen doing that before because we have the background which draws to the full screen. I'm feeling nice now, so I'll type the entire thing out instead of doing copy paste. I was about to though. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our sprite patch and draw. We're going to draw using the title texture. We're going to draw to a destination rectangle representing the entire screen. So I'll describe that with a new rectangle with a position x and y of 0, 0, and then a width and height to match the screen width and screen height. And of course we need to give it a color. The title screen has already been set up with proper colors, so I'm simply going to give it white. And that's it. That's the title screen. So at this point, we can break away from screen methods for just a minute and test this, see what this is actually looking like in-game.
Sounds good.
So that means a quick jump to the draw method in-game. Now to test this, I'm going to all but finish this off. I'm going to put the title screen inside of the title state. So here we are in draw, here we are on our game state switch, and here is the case for the title screen. So we'll jump in here and make a call to draw title screen. Now of course we have at the moment no way of accessing the title state. So we can change that by going back to the temporary initialization back in initialize, where we're setting the game state to playing, and change this to title. Now once we get to the title screen we have no way of advancing, but I'll address that here in just a minute. Let me build, make sure that nothing's gone amiss, and we have a successful build, so let me play and try this.
Hey! Title screen.
There we go. Title state. Now of course we're kind of stuck in this because no buttons are set up for input.
He's hitting start, ladies and gentlemen, but it's just not working.
So this is what I was talking about, where I will do a very small amount of game state changing, just so that we can advance from title to playing, and that way I don't have to keep changing this back and forth. So what we'll do now is we'll jump back to the update section for the game, and if you remember we put in some temporary button code for died, so that B could change us back to playing. So what I'm going to do is steal that line, for simplicity's sake, since it really is just a button check against pressed, and then scroll back up to the title state, paste that check in, and then block in the rest of the if statement. So what do we want to do in title? Well, first off we want to check for the start button, not for the B button. So we'll check for start. If we're in the title state and we hit start, I'm going to I guess as another piece of temp code, jump directly to playing. We're going to skip the level change state altogether. So we'll just set our game state over to gamestate.playing. And now here's our title, but I can advance to playing now.
Excellent.
So that'll be very useful for testing the rest of the screens. Alright, so a little bit of temporary game changing in place. Now we can focus on the rest of the screens. So what I'll do is ease on down to the very bottom of the game class, and we can look at the next screen, and that is the draw death screen. Same as before, this is going to be a private void, draw death screen. And the death screen needs to begin with the overlay, because we want to take everything that's been drawn so far, then put a red overlay on it. But then we want white text on top of the overlay, so the text is going to have to come after the overlay. So let's take a look at putting that in. We'll do a sprite batch draw. We're going to draw the overlay texture, which you remember is a solid white texture. So if we left this alone, the entire screen would go to an opaque white, well, depending on the destination rectangle. Which brings up the next point. What is that? Well, we once again want the entire screen. Now that this has just been retyped, I'll simply copy and paste so I don't have to type it again. We know that this rectangle represents the entire screen, so I'll copy and paste that in to our death screen in the sprite batch draw. So that represents the full screen. Now, this is that overlay we were talking about, so we can use the overlay color here to get the red transparent look. So let's put in overlay color, and that takes care of our draw call. And I could probably just go ahead and put the rest in, because it's to finish this off we just need one line. Well,
two more lines.
Okay.
You died and press A.
Alright, but this is just a very simple text drawing, so I will drop it in here before I test. This will be a call to draw string. For draw string, of course, we need a font. That can be found as the main font field. The text, well, the first line of text is simply going to be the words, you died. So, you died, and then throw an exclamation point after that. Now for the position, these screens, like we had talked about, are going to be very simple. So for the positioning, we're just going to use magic numbers for each of these, since we already know the screen resolution, and we've discussed that in the implementation plan. So the position for this text is going to be a vector2 of 300, 300 by 300. And the color is simply going to be white.
Okay.
Now with that line in place, I will copy and paste it, and we can finish off the second line of text, which is going to be placed a little bit offset to the lower right, and that is press A. Now we need some numbers to adjust this, and we'll use the numbers 470 by 390. So let's see. That takes care of the death screen. Now let's set up to test this over in draw. So I'm going to scroll back up to draw. Now where does the died state draw? Well, looking here, we have the state set up for draw, so we handle playing, died, and game over. All of these things will happen in the same place. So what I can do is jump in right after the call the draw actors, and we could put in a test call to draw death screen. So what is this going to do? Well, first I've apparently broken something. I knew it. I knew I should have run away from that method so quickly. We apparently have something in here that is gone amiss. What are we looking for? Invalid number of overloads. So, now look at that. I put in the overlay color for the texture.
Oh, nice.
Overlay color and texture are two different things. So, there, correct the small mistype. And try again. Alright, game runs. So what does this death screen look like?
Like that.
Well, that's the proper colors. The text is right, but the game isn't frozen. And that's because, well, we're not actually in a died state. But, I mean, that does allow us to test the screen itself. We'll look at some of the state stuff here in just a minute. But this does allow us to test, and we actually have gameplay elements behind, so we get a good, accurate idea of what this is going to look like. So really, since that's, I would consider that a success for the death screen, let's do the game over screen now. Now the game over screen is going to be almost identical. As a matter of fact, it is identical, except the words say game over. With that in mind, I'm going to copy the entire method, paste, duplicate it, and change the name to draw game over screen. Draw game over screen. Overlay texture stays because the game over screen has the red text. Press A should remain. We'll just change the words to game over. And then a quick test of that. Draw game over screen. Jump into the playing state. And that's what the game over screen would look like.
Very nice.
And let's see. What do we
You
want
could go ahead and throw a little if statement in there right now to make sure that those are drawn only if we are in those states.
Right. We could actually finish off this series of drawn actions, because if you remember now, we've got playing, died, and game over all result in entering this area of code. So how does this actually get represented? Since this is indeed correct, that's what I want to have happen. So in each of these states, we always have background actors. But we need to do a further check, because we don't always want to draw the death and game over screens. We only want to draw them if we have in fact died or in fact hit a game over state. So that means we do an additional if check inside of this. So we can say that if our game state is equal to GameState.died, then we want the died screen. Else if, actually let me drop this back up. I'll change the function call in just a second. So we can put in an else if the game state is equal to GameState.GameOver, then we draw the game over screen. So paste that in, change this one to draw death screen. And there we go. So we enter and draw everything in all of these states, or all of these cases, and then do some checks. Have we in fact died? Draw the death screen over everything. Or have we hit game over? And if so, draw the game over screen.
Now to make this, before you build, let's go ahead and move back up to update and change it to where you have to hit the B button to continue after you die to the A, because then it'll all match up.
Okay. Oh yeah, it'll match the text drawn.
Exactly.
So yeah, really quick, let's jump up to died. We were checking B. Let's change that over to A.
So now everything's in sync. Now let's try it.
Alright, title screen, jump in. Normal playing screen. So let's wait for an enemy to spawn, and then a collision. Well, look at that. Because we are in fact setting the game state. We have done the checks for enemy player collisions, and we're setting the state to died, which in the past resulted in the game simply locking up. But now we have further checks to handle this. If we've died, we draw a screen, and we get the result we see here.
And if we press A, we continue playing. Excellent. And died again.
So that's working very nicely.
Okay. So I guess now we can start working on the big one.
The level change screen. Alright. Let's jump back to the screens region. And let's make one more method. A private void draw level change. No, I missed out. Hardcore.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Draw level change screen.
With an R.
Oh, nice. So that's it. I've used up all my spelling allotment for the night. No more spelling can take place.
Okay.
Alright, now, since draw level change screen is going to have so many elements, what I'm going to do is define what I'm going to call a root position. I'll just define a position variable, and I'll draw everything as an offset to that position. What that means is that if I go back after drawing and positioning all of these elements relative to each other, if I suddenly decide that the entire group of elements needs to move to the left a little bit, I'll have one position I can change instead of having to change everything. So, let's see. I'm going to make this position, this root position, a variable type of vector2 called position. And I'll set that to a position somewhere on the screen. I've got the numbers 270 by 230 lined up. Alright, now the first thing we want to draw inside of this level change screen, the first line of text is going to be what level that we're currently on. Oh wait, actually...
No, it's actually going to be a level change texture.
Let me back up there one. We want the level change texture as a background to this overall
which is kind of the darkened, faded out title screen, really.
And to make that very quick, what we could do is we could draw or steal one of the draw lines and just paste that in.
There you go, and then we can just change that overlay out for level change texture.
There we go. Very good.
Nice. Okay.
All right, so we can move on to the second thing.
So now we can get into some text.
All right, time for text. So let's see. Debating on whether or not to steal one of these.
We can slowly build this up, you know. How about, to begin with, go ahead and copy that method name. Let's jump back up, and let's go ahead and dump that into the first state you come into.
Right.
So that each time we add a new line, we can just build and run just to show everybody how this screen's being built up.
Right, yeah, I agree, because the other thing with that is we have no way of entering the level change state at the moment. So to make this very easy, what's the first thing we hit? Well, it's the title screen. So we could temporarily comment out the draw title screen, put in a call to the level change screen, and now even right at this moment, we could test. And we get this.
Aha!
Wow, that's interesting looking. Why do we have a blue screen with this red halo-y effect, or red overlay effect? Well, we never changed the background or the device clear color, because we've always been drawing a background texture, we've just never noticed it.
And even though that's not a problem, let's go back down and analyze our call to draw.
Well, if you remember, I got lazy and stole a line from somewhere else, which has
overlay texture that has alpha.
It has an overlay color, and it said this texture has already been finished to its final format. It already has its proper colors, so I'm going to give it an overlay of white instead. So what would this yield now?
Very nice.
Proper darkened background texture.
Okay. Now let's focus on that text on top of this.
Alright, so drawing some text. Let me see. We need the text for level and then some number, which I'm just going to put in temporarily. And I don't have any offset in mind specifically. I'll just write this out. I was going to copy it, but I've changed my mind. So we'll draw some new text. We'll draw it with the main font. We'll draw the text, level, and then some number. So what I'm going to do is temporarily, instead of putting in a number, is just put in some text like, in brackets, num. So like, when we have a number to plug in, this is where it goes.
Okay.
Now for the position, I'm just going to feed it position, because this is the first line of text. This exists at the very beginning. I could add on a vector of 0, but it would be redundant for this line. And the color for the text is going to be white. Alright, and we could do a quick test and see what that's looking like. So level and some number.
Very nice.
Alright, next thing to draw is going to be the cell display, the info line that shows the texture of the cell times number of cells. So that means we actually need to drop in the cell texture. So what we'll do is we'll make a call to draw. We'll draw the actual cell texture. We'll draw it to the position. So we've got this root position now. So we'll take that position but apply an offset. I'm going to make a new vector 2 for that offset. So I say off of the root position we offset no more in X, but we offset down a little bit, 30 pixels in Y. And then for the color, let me show this real quick. Let me set it to color.white. So we've got a cell texture, no modulation, an offset position. What does this result in? Ooh, look at that. If you remember, the cell texture is actually a grayscale texture.
That's right.
The reason being is that we can then take and apply a green or a purple or some interpolated value, and that way we can animate the color.
Mm-hmm.
But that means here, we don't want a white cell. We want a cell that looks like a default healthy cell. We've got that color already stored as one of the parameter fields, and that is the cell healthy color. If we plug that in instead, there we have a properly drawn cell.
Okay.
So after that, we need the line of text that goes next to it. That shows like by some number.
Yeah, some number.
So that's going to be a sprite batch called the draw string to get the text. Using the main font, I'm going to draw the text by some number. And for that, I'm still going to use the same thing where we just bracket in num. And we'll replace this with some real numbers when we have those numbers available. Now for the position, again, we'll start at the position and then add a new vector as an offset. So new vector 2. The offset's going to be let's say 70 by 50. And for the color, the enemies have their final colors, so I'm not going to give it a modulation color. We'll just do color.white. And a quick test.
Very nice.
And cell by some number. Everything nicely aligned. Now we can take this, and I'm going to duplicate both these lines of code, because we need to do the same thing, but for enemy. So that means we need to take in and draw the enemy texture. Now the enemy is going to be offset a little bit differently. It's going to need to be moved down, so I'll set it to 90 pixels instead of 30 pixels in Y. And then we can change...
And instead of a healthy cell color...
Right, we need to set that back to white. It would actually be kind of funny if we left it green, then we'll have a green tinted enemy.
That's true.
But I mean, since you pointed that out, let's change that to white. Okay. Since we already know how to draw enemies. So we'll plug in the correct texture.
Okay.
All right, now onto the draw string. We have the font. We want to draw by some number that we don't have yet. Then the position offset is going to be 70 once again, but the Y is going to be advanced to 110 pixels.
Okay. Let's go ahead and give that a shot.
So what does this give?
Very nice.
Cells and enemies drawn by some number of text.
Excellent. All right, so all that's left is the press A.
And I'm going to steal that from one of the other screens. Several other screens have the press A line, so I'll simply steal that, jump in and paste it. One final test yields the following.
Woo,
level,
perfect.
some stuff, and press A. So that's it for the level change screen. Now I'm going to go back up to draw and change this back to title screen, since that is the desired result inside of the title state. As a matter of fact, I won't delete it. I'll move it down to the level change state. Even though we're not in that state, putting this in place means we're ready to go once we start using this state.
Right.
So I'll just go back up to title, uncomment the draw, and now we have the proper title screen, moving on to the game, and we should still have all the death screens in place.
And of course we can't get to the game over screen because we don't yet have all the game logic in place to subtract our lives and to kick us into that state. So that is everything we set out to accomplish in this part, and that is going to wrap up this video. Thanks a lot.